All right, we've got to deal with something serious here. I want to start with going back to the Sam Harris, Bill Maher, Ben Affleck controversy. Now, if you remember, new atheist, so-called new atheist, Sam Harris, appeared on HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher a couple of weeks ago. And during a discussion about radical Islam and the influence of religious extremism on society, Ben Affleck, who was also on the show that day, took offense. And Ben Affleck took offense interjecting to Sam Harris and Bill Maher's discussion, interjecting that their view, the view they were espousing, was some combination of racist and xenophobic, and it was painting Muslims as individuals, broadly speaking, as terrorists and in an unfairly negative light. Now, Harris and Maher have since pointed out that they're merely speaking about the problems with the ideology of Islam and not about Muslims as people. The lines there are arguably not as defined as Sam Harris and Bill Maher would like people to believe, but I want to talk about Reza Aslan. Reza Aslan is a religion scholar. He's been doing tons of interviews commenting about the situation on the Bill Maher program. He's been on CNN. He had a long interview with our friend Cenk Uygur over from the Young Turks. And increasingly, Reza Aslan's interviews on this subject have been truly rubbing me the wrong way, both in terms of the substance as well as the style. And I'll go into detail here. There's a really good article, ironically, in Salon.com, which has been a place that has been super critical of people like Sam Harris. But needless to say, there's a good article in Salon by Jeffrey Taylor. And as Jeffrey Taylor says, quote, delivered via multiple media outlets, Reza Aslan's remarks, brimming with condescension, tinged with arrogance, and laden with implicit insults to thinking people, deserve special scrutiny for one main reason. Among well-intentioned liberals who don't know much about religion, his words carry weight. I could not agree more. When Reza Aslan was presented, for example, with arguments about, well, listen, female genital mutilation is quite prevalent in Muslim countries, Aslan argued that this is actually an African problem, not a Muslim problem. Now, let's look at the data, okay? Is that true? Let's analyze every claim made based on the data we have. In terms of the number of countries, there's no denying that FGM is more prevalent in Africa than in other places. However, there are still quite a few countries in the MENA region, Middle East, North Africa, and in Asia, where FGM is absolutely prevalent. Bahrain, Iran, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Oman, the Palestinian territories, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Afghanistan, Brunei, Pakistan, prevalent or widespread female genital mutilation. It does happen in India, but it seems to be isolated to the Shia Muslim Bora community there. And Reza Aslan often holds up Indonesia as a kind of moderate Muslim counterpoint to Saudi Arabia, but female genital mutilation is prevalent in Indonesia, and there is even a mass circumcision ceremony, female circumcision ceremony, organized by Islamic foundations in Indonesia to celebrate the Prophet Muhammad's birthday. So on the facts, Lewis, much of what Reza Aslan has been peddling is just factually inaccurate.
Mm-hmm. In all of his interviews, he, whenever someone brings up something about criticizing Islamic countries for something they do, he says, well, what about Indonesia and Turkey?
That's right.
And it just doesn't hold up.
So what's the broader issue here? The broader issue I have here with Reza Aslan is that he's arguing that it doesn't really matter how violent a particular religious text is because they're open to interpretation, and we shouldn't read anything into them in terms of the specifics of more or less violence or more or less calls to action, because all that matters is how people interpret the texts. He's right when he says that the Jewish Torah and the Christian Bible, which adds the New Testament, and the Quran all contain violence. However, and this is where we disagree, I think that progressives are being bamboozled if they think it is wrong in principle to differentiate about which religious text has more literal followers and which religious text is leading directly to violence being committed. Now, let's take a step back here. We've claimed time and time again accurately, that when those on the right say, hey, the Nazis, they were an atheist movement. We've explained, first of all, that this is factually wrong in the sense that Hitler and most Nazis were Christian. But the line between Christian belief and doctrine and the Holocaust is not that direct of a line. In other words, while there is no denying that Hitler and his cohorts were Christian, the reasoning for carrying out the Holocaust, to me, was not so directly rooted in religious texts. However, if we look specifically at Islamic suicide bombing, there is little to no denying that the texts themselves, Lewis, promise this afterlife with the virgins, and they glorify martyrdom, and you can very directly connect the text to the actions. Does this mean that all Muslims are bad people? Of course not. Does this mean that there aren't moderate Muslims? Of course not. What it does mean is that Reza Aslan's claim that the texts don't matter at all is flat out false.
It's just irresponsible. It's irresponsible to try and leave religion out of this conversation when clearly, a lot of these heinous crimes are being done in the name of religion. So it's just irresponsible. And I used to think this was a pretty smart guy.
There's no question that he's smart and he's knowledgeable, but I think he's just distorting on this particular issue with his apologia. And I don't think his Islamic apologia is helping anybody.
It's not helping. It's not helping at all. It's certainly not going to help solve any of these problems.
Another problem with Reza Aslan's recent statements. We often criticize on this show how dishonest it is when religion apologists frame atheism or agnosticism or secularism as a sort of religion, as dogmatic beliefs. We've talked about this so many times, Lewis. Not believing in God is to religion as not collecting stamps is to having a hobby. We've made this abundantly clear. Reza Aslan is falling into the same circle of nonsense. Quote from Reza Aslan: "Atheism is a belief system like any other belief system." He said this to HuffPost Live. "It's a set of propositions about the nature of reality, and like any set of propositions, it can neither be proven nor disproven." This is patently false. Secularism is simply the belief that we should not have religious beliefs intertwined with state and government and the legal system. Atheism and agnosticism are not a set of beliefs in any way remotely equivalent to religion. They are the knowledge, the understanding that the claims made by religion have not been proven in any way. And I find this absolutely damaging because a lot of progressives, Lewis, who, when they hear the same claim made by religious rightists, rightly reject it. But for some reason, they're being kind of mesmerized, and they don't realize that Reza Aslan is making essentially the same claim.
He sounds like a lot. If you compile all of his claims and arguments, to me, he sounds a little bit like a religious extremist, to be honest.
And in a response to a viewer's comments that, hey, atheists don't start wars, Reza Aslan responded, "I'm sure that would be quite a surprise to the countless victims of Stalin, Mao, and Pol Pot." Wrong again. There is no questioning the bloodthirsty nature of those non-believers, but none of them committed the atrocities in the name of or for the sake of their atheistic beliefs. And we have to distinguish this. This is not the same. And I think that these comments from Reza Aslan are flat out dangerous, and progressives need to wake up and realize that a lot of his ideology, or at least what he's claiming to be his ideology here, or his beliefs, are not that different from the religious rightists that we oppose.
It's dangerous stuff. We need to completely discredit this guy because he's gone off the deep end.
Let's take a break. Back with more after this.